Good morning. This being Memorial Day, I'd like to just recognize the military veterans among us and pledge to work to end the necessity for young people to join the military just to get an education. And also, following along what Steve Strauss said yesterday, just a reminder that after the Russian Revolution, soldiers were able to elect their officers. So we need a union for soldiers as well. For about 200,000 years, humans have experimented with many ways of working together in order to survive in harsh environments. As luck would have it, the period we live in has capitalism as the dominant force that defines social relations. Capitalism was preceded by a period of feudalism, wherein monarchies owned all the land and, by force of arms, lived lavishly on the backs of the 99%, most of whom were peasants, who produced all the crops and raised the animals. These monarchies were deposed and replaced by a rising business class that developed devilish and brutal ways to disengage people from the land and force them to work for industry or starve. Whereas the kings and nobles had demanded food to eat and tributes in order to raise armies and live lavishly, the industrialists demanded profits. Whereas the nobility took every third pig and half the crops, the boss approached thievery more deliberately and completely. They calculated the minimum sustenance that people needed to be able to return to work tomorrow. And then they took everything else after giving that up for wages. Everything else. So if you wonder why productivity has gone up but workers' wages haven't, realize productivity increases belong to the boss. So, friends and comrades, we are heirs to 400 years of capitalist rule and those same number of years of resistance to it.
Yeah.
In our time, capitalists have unleashed a mass extinction on the planet. After meteor hits and ice ages, this one is man-made, and our species and others will only survive with care. And now must be the time for the 99% to confront and end capitalism internationally and replace it with life-preserving socialism, as we've been talking about. So an important vehicle in this struggle to assert the dominance of working people is the labor movement. The main objective of the workers' movements that we've inherited is defense. Occasionally, improvements are made to our civil liberties and rights, but generally, unions fight mostly to keep things from getting worse. And they're busy in this time of heightened oppression as teachers and longshore workers and public employees are mobilizing. And these union-represented folks aren't the only ones demanding improvements. As you know, domestic workers and fast food workers, with support from unions and NGOs, are winning improvements throughout the country. And last week, an SEIU organizer friend spent 12 hours on May 15th, which was a designated national day, engaged in demonstrations with fast food workers who marched and rallied in Seattle at 3 McDonald's, a Target, an IHOP, a Domino's, and countless other stores. These manifestations of struggle are exciting, but inherently limited, because many labor leaders today depend on elected politicians and focus on changing laws instead of mobilizing folks. Even so, if you happen to be working in a place without a union, I urge you to either form one or find a union job rather than be an individual target for the boss. Caucuses, which is our purpose in talking this morning, forming caucuses help by combining one's individual efforts with others in the workplace or the union. So what is a caucus? A caucus is a committee. And most start out as small informal groups of like-minded people, members of a union who want to pursue a common goal. I'm going to give an example from, a current example from my work at the Boeing company in the Machinists Union. And Boeing is a private employer. They've made the planes that you came on, probably. And the other comrades will be talking about their experience in public sector. Last year was the 75th anniversary of the Machinist Union of Boeing. The 30,000 members of the mammoth and vastly wealthy aircraft builder were blackmailed into sacrificing their hard-won pensions in order to preserve their jobs. The saga started last October when, even though there was a contract in effect until 2016, the IAM International, that is the body that oversees all the local machinist unions, has a headquarters back east, and that's the International Union, permitted Boeing to present a takeaway revision to the contract. Boeing threatened that it would leave the state of Washington to build its new Model 77 revisions elsewhere unless it received state concessions worth $8 billion, billions more in road modifications, and replacement of the machinist's hard-won defined benefit plan with one based on the stock market. Boeing demanded an answer in 1 week. The Democratic Party governor forced the legislature to give in without debate. But as far as the machinist pension portion, the union's secondary leadership organized workers against giving in. And I was proud to address a union rally as a retiree to explain the necessity of keeping the pension and damning the Democrat governor and Democrat-led legislature for what it did by giving away tax money. Major organizing was accomplished by the union offices and business reps within the plant and on the internet. Facebook did a lot of work. The machinists bucked. As a result of all this organizing, the machinists voted no 2-to-1 to giving up their pension. Pero, there's a but. And this shows the power of corporations these days. The company and the international president forced a revote. And this time they succeeded by a sliver of a majority due to a terror campaign that occupied front page print and TV media for weeks, with calls by the governor, by legislators, by mayors of cities. It was a terror campaign that you are going to lose your job, the company's going to leave, you're selling out your families and your neighbors and your kids if you don't give up your pension. And the international president forced the vote at the edge of the Christmas holiday, when senior people were still away. They had an extra couple days, and forced the vote to happen on January 3rd, so fewer of the people who had been through all the previous strikes to keep these pensions were out of town. So the vote was something like 50, not quite 51%. I urge people staying together to form a caucus within the union after this vote happened. Because I know, as you know, that a lot of energy will come together to fight something, but then it'll dissipate. And we didn't want people to get disillusioned and so forth. So Rosie's leader, a woman named Shannon Riker, who installs floor panels in 777. It's interesting to learn these people's jobs. I talked to Shannon about starting a caucus, and we talked about it with some of the other people who are in the forefront, and they liked the idea. And we formed an ad hoc steering committee. And I borrowed statements of purpose that comrades have used in various other places and adapted it to the union. And it was adopted, a statement of purpose, because it's very important. When you bring people together, you agree on what it is we're about and what some of the rules are and who can be part of it and that sort of thing. So it's now waned. This electoral stuff has happened. This evil guy is back in power. We have a new local union president, and the time is for the caucus to come back together to plan what it wants to do. But as you know, that after a big flurry, I'm wrapped, there's sort of a quiet period, and summer is starting, and people's kids are back in the house. And so I'm hoping that other people will stay in for the long term. I know some will, and be able to keep on going. So we're going to regroup in June and work for ways to teach members how to take back their union and control things.